welcome back to my channel. I wanted to do a video on the criminal justice system and also in life in general of being accused of something that isn't true, and generally, so whether it's on the criminal justice system or whether it's just in life in general, because this is something I've done a few videos about this type of thing before, where I'm coming to terms with the differences between systems. Obviously, in this imperfect world, in this very polarized world that is full of basically lies and also falseness, but also there is some structure in order to keep, especially in more developed countries. Not in all countries. Some countries don't actually have a government at all and live independently. Citizens live independently. And I'll tell you what, in a future life, or as an animal of some form, and I don't have to live with the government, I will very much appreciate that, because I tell you what, the government doesn't half. I mean, obviously, it's got its positives, and it's not to say it's always fucked me over, but it does fuck people over, and it does also get things wrong. And obviously, there's ways, God made this world, but it's definitely broken in many ways, and I have made videos about this. And it's like, the structures in place in order to try and create order, especially in more developed countries, or that is initially what drives it. But often a lot of it's led by money, a lot of it's led by greed of the people highest at the top. And obviously I do think there's a sense of justice that can come into these structures to one extent or another, but I also think that the processes are very turbulent that are created in order to find this justice. And I also think that a lot of justice isn't justice, especially because of the biases that bring about situations in the first place. I'm talking about people here that, this is quite a heavy topic, to be fair, just people, some might not interest all people, but it's the people that end up in prison and stuff for long periods of time because of situations where they've caused extreme harm or fatal harm through things like provoking or things that were self-defense and stuff like that, where they didn't go out with malice. And I'm not saying that you have to have malice in order to be in the clear, to not be in the clear. I'm not saying that we wouldn't have an ordered, structured society if people could just go around hitting each other. But I also think that sometimes people that work in these systems as well can be backwards, and they can abuse power, and it's not a comfortable system. I do think in any situation there's a fine line between being above board and being below board in terms of um, living, and that can go with poverty, it can go with homelessness, it can go with the criminal system. You can have citizens that are perfect and serving society in every manner, but they can get themselves in a really bad situation, and all of a sudden they can be in prison for the rest of their lives. And they can be treated like the worst of the worst. No one's protected completely from harm. And obviously there's the myths around the people higher up being the most happy. Seeing people in high up situations has shown me that money doesn't buy happiness, and often people right at the top are often very depressed because they are greedy and they are guilty of bad things, even their karmic footprint, shall I say, of greed in the world and overuse of power. Unfortunately, they live in a system that just feeds into that, and therefore they're unhappy. I've been there myself, and I won't do it to myself anymore because it's not. I just can't do it to myself. But anyway, obviously everyone's got their different place in the world. Of course, people high up sometimes that are doing good things for the world, and I'm not saying if you work hard you're bad, if you're rich you're bad, but I do think that the myth of if you're at the top you are in the best position is a lie overall. I'm not saying they can't be happy, in overall, they can be living their lives in whatever that is, but it's definitely a massive myth. And anyway, I just feel it's not, it's where's that line of I mean, it's always going to be broken, everything's always going to be broken, but I think it's about navigating the world in the best way you can, in the fact of trying to live life with the most comfort you can, in the everyday overall. And that's obviously going to be different for different people. If you've got, I looked into this thing called Varna recently, and you can have different levels of Varna. Varna is basically like the hierarchy of society as per ancient India, and it's like you can have I think it's Buddhism actually as well. You can have like priests and teachers, and then like warriors and kings, and then like landowners, servants, and people that are like outside of society, beggars and things like that. So you get like 5 sets of Varna, and obviously depending on what type of person you are, what Varna you have, what karma you have, what personality type you have, your idea of comfort is going to be different to the next person. And it's not about projection. Because I used to hate this when I got people that were like, for example, in a higher or lower, different, should I say, Varna to me, to project their needs upon me. It used to really kill me, and I think and to be honest with you, I've probably still got a lot of internalized beliefs from that, especially in like school where you're surrounded by like teachers, which maybe like some level of Varna. I don't really know which one that would fall into, but and society overall, and elders, if you like, projecting what they think you should be doing on you, in parents even, and stuff like that, and siblings and family and things like that, and relationships as well. I think that's a really massive one actually, and I think and that can be really misleading. I feel like either you projecting your expectations based on your Varna or based on your experiences on someone else in a romantic relationship or friendship. Um, and that's why you have to accept people as they are, or see people as they are. Not to say it can't be benefits for having like contrast in Varna and in karma and things like that. It's definitely helpful to have contrast, not only in relationships but also within society at large as well, because obviously you're going to need every element of that. But I think things can be really hard for people that the highest level of Varna. I do think, like, obviously in this element they do say that obviously we've all lived different lives where we've all got different Varna, but obviously in this idea of like having like the highest level of Varna, which would be like the priests and teachers and like and things like that. That's the highest level of Varna apparently. But to have that sort of mindset within a system that is for people, for example, in the lower levels of Varna, like for example school, you're basically doing labor. Basically, you're learning labor. It's education. Well, I mean, it's not really labor. It's like teachers. You're learning information, which is basically being taught. But then if you're actually the type that is more about like the middle level of Varna, which is like a landowner, you might not benefit from learning loads about art, whereas that's in a different level of Varna. It's like a Sudra or something. I think the level of Varna is that where you've got like artisans are in that, and labourers. I think that's the level I fall into as per my birthday. You can work it out based on your birthday. Obviously you can just look at it in society as well, but based on people's different Varna and karma and stuff like that, you're gonna have different goals. And like I heard this thing recently, and it really made me think actually, of like when we incarnate, right? It can be, some of us actually have an intention to, or go through periods where we incarnate. We can talk about it like that, but we go into life with a intention to actually be a certain thing or do certain things, and those intentions aren't always nice. Like, you can have things that happen, right? And it's not always like things that happen. Like, we can go into and incarnate into situations where we want to cause chaos, especially if you're like a certain type of person that doesn't, I don't know, you incarnate into situations where you actually want to do certain things that might appear negative in the eyes of society or in the eyes of other people, and it's not for someone to come over and save them, because that can differ to what extent that is from or not. It's not about like, a savior complex. I feel like that's important to recognize. But I've literally gone on a massive tangent here. I was trying to talk about the criminal justice system. But I mean, what's I on about with the criminal justice system? I think with this, obviously structures are in place to. It's just because I've seen a documentary recently about where loads of people were accused of stuff, and I feel like being accused in society at all whatsoever is a horrible, horrible thing, especially when it's uncalled for and unnecessary. And I don't think there's always justice to the extent that it deserves, especially in really serious situations. For example, when people like get imprisoned for life for things they didn't do and stuff, just based on the circumstances they were given and the people that were involved and stuff. Um, and like, and one person's, what's the worst thing about it is one person's interpretation is not necessarily the truth, especially when people are in levels positions of power, which is the worst thing about it. When people are in positions of power or in positions of control or perceived power, or in whatever degree that is, they often abuse their power, and they often are brainwashed actually into believing that they have the monopoly on a circumstance which they've got position for. So, and I think also obviously there's the balance there of you need people in society, especially in developed society, to run the country in order to have food in the supermarkets, to make sure that people aren't extinct, especially in places that are not so based in community and things like that, where there might be still traditions of like actually farming and things like that, which is going to be help with the community and stuff in order to like live and that. But so obviously you got to have people that are in that boat, that do stuff. But also obviously there's always going to be, I think it's about recognizing the minority. It's the minority of people that actually abuse their power, because it is just the truth, like that there are groups of society that are actually wrong, or they want to cause chaos, or overall they have malice intent towards one extent or another based on a variety of factors, let's just put it that way. And and yeah, I it's tricky because obviously um no one's got complete control. No human being has got complete control. You know, um, I do believe that the world is like divinely guided, and that the universe is divinely guided. Um, but no one has complete control, and often in society, because of the marginalized kind of simple-minded creatures that we are by nature, it's very easy to kind of we like most, well, not most people, some people, or people that live in homes, or I mean so, some people like, I feel like that's such like an ignorant thing to say. I think humans overall, they like predictability, and to one extent or another, even if it's not something they agree with, they want to have consistency in one degree or another. I think that's probably a generalized statement which does apply. Um, Even if it's like not consistency for themselves, but consistency of circumstances, just so they can predict it and they feel it makes them feel safe internally, like as a mammal. Um, but but yeah, obviously things are always going to be wrong to one extent or another. And obviously you've got some circumstances where like there's loads of wars in some countries, and there's loads of like poverty in other countries, and there's loads of like abuses of power in other countries, and things. I suppose you always pick your pick your karma and pick your circumstances. um you don't consciously pick it. I do believe we do pick it as we incarnate, but it's obviously going to have its benefits and its negatives. um but yeah, I think also I just wanted to add in, obviously, just like when it comes to actually being accused, and you can call someone egotistical for caring too much when they're accused of something, but I think it's when you're accused unjustly of something, and you are manipulated through a system in order for someone higher up to gain power. And that does really bother me, because obviously it's not right, and it's not healthy. But obviously the universe we live in, we all have to have different circumstances, and obviously sometimes people do get fucked over, and that's just the way it goes. And you have to deal with your circumstances, because some people are fucked over in environments where they're abused for reasons that they don't deserve. People are hurt and killed for reasons they don't deserve. people are put into difficult circumstances for reasons they didn't deserve, and obviously, and that can vary from person to person. I do believe our struggle is all relative, but obviously, it's not about trying to internalize people's projections of you, um, because they're often wrong. I say this again and again. If people are trying to change you and you don't care, like you don't care about them, and they're not a relation to you, and they're not a high kind of esteemed, what's the word? A high esteemed like person to you. It's it's not something that you have to worry about. And it's not about internalizing someone's beliefs, because often they don't apply to you, and often people, because they're self-focused, will care mainly about themselves, and also brainwashed by systems that they work within, and often people don't take the extra mile to actually to find truth, and they'll only just go with the systems that they're indoctrinated into, which is very sad, because often it leaves a lot of people with a lot of shortcomings, actually, and it really does screw some people over. But unfortunately, that is unfortunately the cards we are dealt in life. So let's not rambling now, because I feel like I've gone on for long enough. But I think it is interesting to learn about this and injustices and stuff like that. So thanks for listening.